What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hutch Coming in Clutch. I'm your host, Hutchison Brown, and today we've got a fantastic show. We are looking at some early best ball values. If you missed last week, we talked about some early best ball overpays. So we're going to talk about some values today. I've got 6 players, as well as an honorable mention I want to throw out there for these values. And before we get into that, though, I'm going to have some OTA/training camp news, some breaking news from around the NFL. We're talking about little rumors, things being thrown out so far by coaching staff in training camp. So it's going to be exciting. So before I get into all the show today, please follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchisonB_FF over there on Blue Sky as well. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so you'll be notified every single time a new episode drops. Don't forget to follow the podcast on TikTok and Instagram as well for little clips and reels and highlights and more. So without further ado, let's get into the news for the show today. We're going to start. James Cook is not at voluntary OTAs amidst contract disputes. So, obviously he wants the contract. He wants the 15 plus million per year. That's what he seems to want. And the Bills have said they're unwilling to give that to him. I mean, the GMs, the coach staff have made it very clear that he's not going to get that. Personally, when I look at this, I would not give James Cook that money. Look, he's a solid back, but he was incredibly inflated by touchdowns last year. He was actually not that elite of a back. It's just that he scored a ton of touchdowns and got in the red zone a lot. I'd offer him I'd offer him a solid 8 to 10 million per year, solid running back money, top 10 running back money, but nothing more than that. So, next piece of breaking news, I just want to go through this really quickly because I'm done talking about this guy. Aaron Rodgers, is he a Steeler? I don't know, and I don't want to talk about him again until he signs. There's been more rumors saying the deal is approaching, it's coming to an end. Steelers are going to get Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins has also been thrown out as a backup plan. I don't know, man, but I just want to see him sign. That's all. Jeremy Fowler, on the Browns QB situation. He's been, looking into the Browns quarterback room. He said, quote, I think they look at quarterback pieces like currency. If someone goes down training camp, like there's an injury, they have somebody that they can trade. Maybe it's Pickett, maybe it's one of the rookies, but I have a hard time thinking they keep 4 on the roster. I think it might be 3. I'm going to agree with Fowler here at the end there that they're definitely only going to keep 3 quarterbacks in this roster. When you look at the majority of NFL teams, you don't keep 4 quarterbacks on a roster, on an active roster at least. You keep 3. And here's the problem, guys, because Dylan Gabriel's a day 2 pick. You ain't cutting him right away. He's going to make the roster. Then you have Kenny Pickett, who I know this sounds dumb, but it's true to NFL teams that he was a first-round pick and that he's just coming off a Super Bowl win where he played in the Super Bowl. I know that's cherry picking it, but that's legit for an NFL team. He's a Super Bowl champion. And you're not going to cut him. Like, he's probably your starter. Then you have Joe Flacco, who has been a very good veteran quarterback when he's been on the field, and he could also be their starter if he plays well enough and if he's still got it at the quarterback position. And then you have Shedeur Sanders, who is a 5th-round pick who could be cut from this roster. It's very obvious that Shedeur Sanders is on the hot seat. He's a 5th-round pick, a day 3 pick. He could easily be cut, and the Browns would lose nothing. So it's really, really difficult to say that Shedeur Sanders is safely going to be on this roster in 2025. You got to consider the fact that he might be cut or traded. So keep an eye on that as we go through the offseason. Now, the next piece of news we got to talk about, the Jacksonville Jaguars. How have they been using Travis Hunter? So looking at early practices, they have been primarily putting Travis Hunter on the offensive side when it comes to on the field. The coaching staff has said they have gotten him in some defensive meetings. They have gotten him some film breakdowns just to talk with him on the defensive side of the football. But for now, he's mostly on offense. And the coaching staff has also mentioned that during practices, he's going to focus on one side each practice. It's going to alternate between the two, between defense and offense. But when it comes to practices, it's going to be all defense for one practice or all offense for one practice. That's kind of what Liam Cohen was alluding to. And that's totally great. That's totally fine. It's going to help him get some real continuity with both the offense and the defense. But so far what we've seen is the first 2 practices, this guy's been on offense and he's been flashing. So that's a good sign for his potential fantasy football value. Looking at the Falcons, they've made it very clear Michael Penix Jr. is QB1. And this is going to be really interesting for fantasy football. Michael Penix Jr., I don't see him being a rushing quarterback, given that he had multiple serious injuries in college, given the fact that I mean, he was decently athletic before his injuries, but he wasn't like, a Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen level athlete. I don't think we're to see a guy that puts up, 300, 400 rushing yards. I think he'll be in that 100, 150 range and maybe a touchdown or two. And that's just not going to make a difference. So you're going to need to depend on him for elite passing volume. And the thing is, he could provide that in this offense. You have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, if he steps up. You have Darnell Mooney. You have Raymond McLeod. I think they re-signed him. And then you have Bijan Robinson in the backfield, who could be a great receiver. Tyler Algier could also chop in some pass catching work. Like, they have a great receiving core. And you have a good offensive line. And Michael Penix Jr., while he was inconsistent, he did flash last year. He showed some signs of some incredible accuracy. He's shown willingness to target one or two options. He's shown willingness to get the football to his best players like Drake London and Darnell Mooney. They were experiencing some really high target shares when Michael Penix was on the field. And Michael Penix Jr. overall just put up some solid games. I mean, against Carolina, that was a high-scoring shootout, and Penix came up to the test. I mean, he was there, and he was competing in that game really, really well. So I'm excited to see what he does this year, but I'm definitely coming in with some hesitancy because he was an older quarterback. He did come in, and he looked all right, not amazing. He did flash a little bit, but we'll see what happens in year two. Now, the next thing we got to talk about, Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs. These two, I think they showed up for voluntary OTAs, but a lot of the offseason has portrayed them as they're just chilling. They're kind of just hanging out, man. Tyreek Hill's appearing on a lot of streams and just kind of hanging out. And then Stephon Diggs, the recent video that came about him specifically, he was hanging out with some ladies on a boat. He had some kind of substance in his hand that was a little sketchy. And the Patriots have been informed. They know they haven't done anything about it yet, but we'll see if anything happens there. I don't think anything is going to go down. It's just whatever. But just keep an eye on that as we move through the offseason. There could be something there. And then Malik Nabers missing OTAs with a toe injury. So keep an eye on this one. He had a toe injury throughout last season. There was a little bit of that. And it could affect him this year, but I doubt it. I think this is just, being cautious with your superstar wide receiver. I expect him when full-on training camp starts, in July, when we get July and August, he's going to be fully ready to go. But that's going to be it for the breaking news, guys. We ran through that. Some really interesting stuff going on in training camp. I guess if we have news next week, I'll talk about some more as well, because throughout the offseason, there's going to be so much coach speak, so much hype, so much little pieces, little reports being thrown out. It's going to be quite fun. So I'm going to make sure we keep us up on that. And without further ado, let's get into some early best ball values. So last week, again, I talked about the overpay, so make sure you go check that out if you missed it. But today we're talking about some values. I'm going to start with a player that I have never really been crazy invested in. Coming out of his draft class, I liked another running back so much better, and this guy just never screamed pass catcher to me. And in the offense he was in, I was just concerned, and I've never been in on him. But this year, I think I'm going to be in. It's Kenneth Walker, guys. Kenneth Walker has never been a pass catcher in his career so far. First two seasons, he was below 30 receptions in 15 games played, at least in both seasons. But this last season, he truly unlocked the receiving game. He was one of 7 running backs above 3.3 receptions per game. He caught 46 catches in 11 games on 57 targets. He has a top 5 running back target share, despite missing 6 games. He was a top 5 running back in target share at 13.8%. And when you look at Charbonnet and you look at Walker and you look at their games together, he doubled Charbonnet in targets. So the third down work is Walker's. It's not a concern. And when you look at the rushing work as well, it's Walker's. Walker completely took over this backfield in a new way last year, where he was getting both rushing work and receiving work. And last year in fantasy points per game, I feel like this goes unrealized. He was a top 12 running back. He was top 12. He was literally an RB1. Back end, yes, because the offense was kind of inconsistent, but RB1 numbers were there. And now you bring in Sam Darnold to this offense. And while I'm concerned about how this offense is going to produce in terms of points, I think Sam Darnold is plenty good enough to dump off the football to Kenneth Walker like 50, 60 times this year. He did it to Aaron Jones. He gave Aaron Jones 62 targets. He was plenty willing to dump off to the running back position. And I think that Kenneth Walker, it's going to be no different, especially considering the fact that Darnold's going to be under a lot of pressure in Seattle, given the fact that offensive line is not great. So I expect a lot of targets for Kenneth Walker again this year. I expect the lion's share of the rushing work, and I expect potential RB1 numbers. And right now he's going off the board at RB18. And I think while he's a strong risk to miss some games, RB18 is a great value given the receiving and the rushing work that you're going to get here. So now let's look at wide receiver. Jordan Addison is one of my favorite values in drafts right now, going at wide receiver 32. I just want pieces of this Minnesota offense, man. I'm in. I just gotta admit it. I'm in on this JJ McCarthy saga. I'm in on it. JJ McCarthy, I believe with Kevin O'Connell that it's gonna work. McCarthy's been working really hard in camp. He's been working really hard all of last season. He's been in the building every single day trying to learn this offense and learn this scheme. And with Kevin O'Connell, how friendly he makes this for quarterbacks with all the receiving threats that you have here, I think this is going to work. So I want Jordan Addison on my team. He's going at wide receiver 32. He was averaging above 14 points per game last year, PPR scoring. The backstretch, it was a lot of touchdowns, but the backstretch for him was absolutely elite. He started off the season really slow. He got arrested for that speeding charge, or right before the season started. Then he had an injury, so the first half was kind of inconsistent, but the back half was absolutely elite. He was up there, with some of the best as like a top 20 wide receiver. So if you can get him a wide receiver 32 as a low risk wide receiver 3, I'm really, really happy with that price because this could be an elite offense and he could be the dominant wide receiver 2 on it. And that's a good piece to have in fantasy. Now, Jameson Williams, another wide receiver 2 on an elite offense. I'm really excited for this one here. He's going to wide receiver 28, very similar range to Jordan Addison. So let's look at his career so far. Rookie year was taken away by the ACL tear. Second year, we had that gambling suspension. He got caught gambling a little bit. And then year 3 was last year. We start slow. We have a suspension for 2 games. And then he takes off in the second half of the season. I mean, he was averaging over 5 catches a game. The dude was a monster in the second half because Detroit Lions defense sucks. They need to throw the ball a lot. But the thing about Jameson Williams that you love to see, he wasn't just a deep threat. He wasn't just a screen pass guy. He wasn't just stretching the field. He was getting targets in every range of the field. He was getting targets in the short intermediate range. He was getting targets on the inside and the outside. He was getting targets downfield. He was working in the slot a little bit. He was going outside. He was all over the place. It was really encouraging to see that development and that ascension. You remember, this guy was the 12th or it was 11th or the 12th overall pick. He was a top half first round pick. Like, this dude was a legit investment, and he's finally starting to come out of that. And he's finally starting to show why he would deserve to be that. Now, when you look at year 4, obviously year 4 is typically not a breakout for a wide receiver, but his rookie year was basically taken away by an ACL tear, and then year 2, he didn't even play. So this is essentially his second season actually playing a full season of football. This coming season is going to be his second year. I'm really excited about what we see from Jameson Williams. This offense, the defense still doesn't look amazing. They add some pieces, but they're still going to struggle a little bit. Their offense is going to be their leader. And looking at what the role is opened up for him, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 1. But on the outside, you got nobody threatening him. He is the clear-cut dude on the outside, and I expect his ascension to continue. So looking at Jameson Williams, wide receiver 28, I'm probably more ranking him as a top 20 guy. Now, let's talk about Justin Fields. QB 13 in best ball ADP. I think this is too low. I think this is going to be higher when August and September come around because people are going to realize, oh yeah, he's Justin Fields. He's going to be, a rushing elite quarterback. So he's going to be put in that, that top 12, top 10 conversation. He's not going to be going QB 13. But even so, I'm still going to be in on Justin Fields. It's really hard not to be. When you look at 4-point scoring, he was points per game QB 6 in 2022. That was a monstrous season for him with Chicago. Then QB 8 in points per game in 2023 if you take out the game that he left early. So still a top 10 quarterback. And then this last year, people think this last year was a disaster. No, it was not. QB 7 in 2024 in points per game in his first 6 starts. The only reason his points per game is so low on most sites is because he technically played in a bunch of other games. But in reality, he only got a couple snaps and a couple rush attempts as like a wildcat or a diversion quarterback to Russell Wilson. He only actually started in 6 games, and in those games, he was a great fantasy football quarterback. And all he had on that offense was George Pickens. The run game wasn't great. The offensive line wasn't that great. George Pickens was the dude. That's all he had. Now in New York, you have a bit of a better offensive line. The offensive line's still not great, but I think it's comparable to the Steelers. Then you have Garrett Wilson, a rookie Mason Taylor who's exciting. You have Breece Hall out of the backfield. You have Braylon Allen out of the backfield. This is exciting. This is exciting compared to what we saw in Pittsburgh. And the Jets are just desperate, man. They're desperate for a franchise player. It feels like they're just going to give the reins to him, let him try it for a year and see how it works. They gave him a 2-year contract, but in reality, it's a 1-year deal given the guaranteed money, and they could cut him after this year with no real worries. So looking at this season, They're going to give him the reins. They're going to see how it works, and I think he's going to have a lot of fun with it. And for fantasy football, you're going to want to have him on your team. Now, looking at the tight end position, Pat Freiermuth, I think he's a great value going at about tight end 18 in most underdog drafts right now. He's not a fun athlete. He's not a guy that's going to get you a ton of yak. He's not a guy that's going to break a ton of tackles. However, you got to look at this offense. DK Metcalf, that's your wide receiver one. Then you have Roman Wilson, who caught 0 passes as a day 2 rookie. You have Calvin Austin, who is not a wide receiver 2 in the NFL. He's not a starting wide receiver in the NFL. Your number 2 role is wide open, like completely wide open. So while Pat Freiermuth is an elite athlete, I could see him voluming his way to a top 10 tight end season, consistently getting targets, consistently getting receptions, and then half PPR formats being a volume king in fantasy football. I could see him hitting, 70, 80 receptions this year. And while only getting like 600 yards, a few touchdowns added onto that, you're going to have a really solid tight end 1 season. So I'm looking at Pat Freiermuth thinking, man, tight end 18 for the volume that he could have, the safety that he could have week to week due to volume in an Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins led offense, I'm in on that. Now, if we head into the season and Mason Rudolph's the starting quarterback and Will Howard's the second guy, I'm definitely going to be less excited about Pat Freiermuth because there's only going to be one option that's potentially relevant on that offense then, and that's DK Metcalf. But if it's Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, a more serviceable quarterback, I'm going to be very, very excited for Pat Freiermuth at that value at least. And then my last one is going to be Luther Burden. Luther Burden is a player that really excites me in the Bears. I feel like the landing spot was really, really discouraging for a lot of people. A lot of people didn't love this landing spot because it's really crowded and you have a questionable quarterback in Caleb Williams who we don't know what we're going to see from in year 2. But I think this is actually really exciting as a landing spot. When you look at the narrative overall, before the NFL draft, someone asked Ben Johnson about the slot position and what it means to his offense and what do you think he's going to do with the Bears in the slot position. And Ben Johnson made it very clear. The slot wide receiver position is incredibly important to his offense. Some systems like to use it and some systems don't. Ben Johnson is one of those systems that he loves to use the slot receiver position. And he was like, maybe Rome can do it. Maybe DJ can do it. We'll have to see. We'll get some boots on the grass and see what happens. Then some practices go down. Some little training camps go down, right? And then the draft comes. They take Luther Burden, who profiles as a heavily profiles as a slot wide receiver, given his size and speed combo, at the second round. Now you enter training camp and voluntary OTAs, rookie camps. That dude has not left the slot. All reports show that dude has been in the slot. Ben Johnson's been in his ear all practice long, showing him how to run this slot position. That's going to be absolutely massive for his value because Ben Johnson wants to implement his scheme here in Chicago. He wants to use the slot position. And if Luther Burden's going to be that dude with Rome and DJ Moore primarily on the outside, you're going to have a lot of fantasy value here. And Luther Burden's going at wide receiver 52 right now. I think he could end up being one of the best rookie receivers in this class. I think he could end up being one of the best rookie receivers for fantasy this year behind Ted McMillan. I think we could see a huge season. He's athletic. He's a yak monster. Like he perfectly fits this role for Ben Johnson's offense. I'm super, super excited to see what we see here from Luther Burden out of the slot position. So last one here that I want to talk about real quick as an honorable mention. I've mentioned him extensively in previous episodes. So I didn't want to sound like a broken record here. But DeAndre Swift, man, he's going to RB29, and he is a running back who's a great athlete. He has no other competition besides Roschon Johnson, so the backfield's his. He's a great athlete. He's got the opportunity. He can catch the football very well. I know this receiving room is crowded, so it might be limited, but he can catch the football if he's needed to, and I think he'll get plenty of receiving work this year. Probably, I would guess like 30 to 45 receptions, somewhere in that range. And then you're looking at an offense that could be top 10 in scoring. Like, I don't get it. You have a great athlete with a lot of opportunity, especially as a receiver in a potentially top 10 offense. And RB29? Your game as an RB3? I'll take that all day. I'll take that all day. I think we can see a very similar season to what we saw in Philadelphia in 2023, where he was very, very good, and he was an elite offense, and he was getting a lot of volume. And as a result, he, in the first half, before Philadelphia fell apart in the second half of the season, he was basically an RB1 in fantasy football. He was a top 12 back in points per game in that first half. like I could see a very similar outcome for DeAndre Swift in Chicago if this offense is really that good. So without further ado, that's going to be it for Hutch Coming in Clutch today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you'll be notified every single time a new episode does drop. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter on Blue Sky at HutchinsonB_FF. Make sure you check out my work over at Football Guys as well. I do a lot of work with Football Guys. Going to be doing a lot of stuff with them in the off season and during the regular season as well. So guys, thank you again so much for tuning in. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. We'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about some best ball sleepers. And then next week after that, I'm actually leaving on a mission trip to Peru. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks of episodes, guys. So I'm going to be gone for then. There will be no episodes coming out. I'm going to take a little break from podcasting in June, and then I'm going to come back end of June towards July and be fully ready to go. It's going to be quite exciting. But that's going to be all for today. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week for the best ball sleepers.